I think I am live here. Just going to give me a second, make sure this is all good. Get everything adjusted. Everything's a bit on an angle. All right, we got some people in here now. If you can hear me, just throw me a shout out in the chat to tell me you can hear me. This is quite tilting this morning. YouTube has changed the way I live stream, so it's an absolute brand new setup. No clue what I'm doing. Don't know if I can share my screen here yet. Not 100% sure there, but I am going. Oh, perfect. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. So we got, you can see me and you can hear me, so that's good. Let's start there. This week we've got the, there's a couple delays, just don't worry, I'm just trying to work behind the scenes and get some pages loaded, as well as trying to get my screen share so that you guys can see me, see the sheet and stuff as I kind of go through some of my core plays. So stick with me. I'm going to get that working just a little bit better here shortly. Where is the sheet? Get this thing shared here as well so we can get a couple more people in here. If you guys got questions, you can start firing them off. I will, I'll get to it here. Inspection's been pretty quiet. Bob Pockers is away, so I'm just waiting on a final update from him before I go any further, updating the sheet or anything, but it looks like about the first 12 rows are all good right now. We'll see what we got. First 9 rows through tech, so that includes the first 18 cars have gone through tech so far. And then when it comes to, okay, no, we're good there. So just waiting on a final update for inspection. Doesn't look like it's going to affect a whole bunch here this week, so not really concerned about that. I'm just going to share this here. Go bowling at the Glen. How's everyone's Sunday going so far? I am sitting here without a coffee and very frustrated at trying to get this set up. It's not been a good morning. All right. Still have no idea how to share my screen. This is not working. Frustrating, infuriating. Pick a word for it. That's how I feel. Tilting, yeah, very tilting. The screen's even on a tilt, so that just kind of explains it as well. So I'm actually going to try and throw something under there because it is driving me nuts. All right, I think that's a little bit better. Sorry for that. Great content here this morning so far. The spreadsheet private, no, it's you can go to my website, and if you just give me a second here, I'm going to share that. By the way, I'm here for rotopros.com as well as dfsr.com. I work for both sites. We both do some different stuff. I do a preview article over at dfsr.com. Comes out Wednesdays or Thursdays. You can go check that out there as well. I also do a preview video for RotoPros on their YouTube channel. You can go check that out as well. The sheet is free. Let me just share my website here that you can go to and pick up a copy of the sheet. No problem there. That's the free version. The members only copy where I usually add some like different correlation stuff, looking at starting and like I did this week, looking at practice times versus finished position, starting position to finish position, highlighted core plays, that sort of thing. Those members only copies are available only in the RotoPros and the DFSR chat rooms. But there is still a free copy with all the research stuff. It's got updated practice times. It's still got the model for now that's going to be transferring over as well. The model is going to be something that's going to be members only as well going forward, but still going to have the free sheet with all the stats, track history, current form, track type, practice information, that sort of thing as well. But I do advise, if you're not a Roto Pros or a DFS, we've got some free trials going on. You can come in and check out what we're about. We do a bunch of different stuff on both sites. I cover almost all the sports for both sites. A lot of good stuff going on there. But yeah, back to the race here. I'm just really trying to get this screen share because I want to show you the cheat sheet here this week. But I see a little button that says send feedback to YouTube. I will definitely be doing that once this video is over. Yeah, I see absolutely no way this is I'm gonna be able to share my screen. So I've actually got an encoder software encoder program set up, like you've seen. If you've seen the Roto Pros videos that are new, I use a program called OBS Studios. I just haven't set it up for a live show on Sunday. I've always just used the Google thing because I like to have that chat over here so I can answer questions as well. I think that's one of the key things to this live show, is actually sitting in here and answering questions to help people out as they're setting up their lineups, especially with all this inspection stuff that's going on there as well. So keep that in mind. This will be a little bit better going forward, so I can have the chat, I can have the screen share, I can have everything set up, kind of like that other Roto Pros video. But for today, this is what we're using. So I'm just going to look at some of my plays. I see someone commented here that Blaney is going to the back. Yeah, I haven't seen that update yet, but I'm 100% on board with you there. I'm pretty sure it has. I've spent so much time to get this video up, I'm probably a little bit behind here. If he's going to the rear and he failed inspection, he's definitely going to be a core play for me. He was already on my core play list, 8,700 on DraftKings, 10-3 on FanDuel. He was starting 19th, and he was 6th in first practice, 11th in second practice, and he was 5th in the 5-lap averages in both of those practices as well. So definitely on board with Blaney, especially if he's going to the back. He's going to be a super chalk there as well. So restart my computer and come back in 5 minutes. It takes a lot longer than that. I've got so much crap that uploads, or sorry, starts, programs that start when I fire up my computer. It literally is a 10-15 minute process now. So I definitely need to take that computer and get that cleaned out. But yeah, back to Blaney. Definitely going to be a core play if he's starting at the rear today. It makes a lot of sense. He showed top 10 speed. Passing is very tough. Let's keep that in mind. We are at Watkins Glen with correlation between starting position, finishing position, pitting early before the end of the stages. And that's something else we have to pay attention to. So there's a lot going on this week in terms of what we have to pay attention to for strategy for fantasy. We're 5 races away from the playoffs. And like I mentioned in chat, there's groups of drivers. There's a group of drivers that have wins. They'll do anything to get more wins, more stage wins as well, to get those playoff points. We've got 2 drivers in, Almirola and Blaney, who are right there over 60 points ahead of the cut line, so that's good there as well. So we don't have to worry about that. But then there's the drivers that are going for points. Sorry, just answering a question here. The drivers that are going for points this week might have some different strategies. We've got Byron, Jones, Larson, Newman, Boyer. They're both tied at 532 points, right on the cut. We got Jimmy Johnson, Suarez, Menards right behind them. Menards getting a little bit further away. He actually falls into my final group, which is drivers who are kind of outside the points. But they're going to need a win. So they might go with some strategy just to try and get that race win to get into the playoffs. Sorry about my throat. I kind of can't really talk today. Good thing, or else I'd be screaming at YouTube for changing this on me today. So that's something to look at, definitely, is the points, where guys are and stuff like that. But Blaney, being that he's kind of comfortable, I don't expect them to go for the win. I think what they're probably looking at if they're starting from the back is, like a top 15 finish is strong for them. A top 10, I think they'd be flattered with the top 10 from starting from the rear of this race, even though they've kind of showed that speed. So I expect them, 10th to 15th place finish from Blaney. That's kind of what I'm looking at starting from the rear, because it is very tough to come through the field here at Watkins Glen. But I think that's at his price, especially, plus the place differential that you're going to get with him this week is more than enough. I don't think he's, a win candidate, like I said, by any means, coming from the rear, but definitely going to be a core play. Even a 15th place finish gets you, 15 to 18 points there. So other drivers I'm looking at, obviously, Kyle Busch stands out as number one in my model this week. Before even practice, he was number one. He's been strong here at Watkins Glen. Just going to bring up some of his information here and just kind of go over that here real quick. So his last races at Watkins Glen, these are his last 10 races. So he's got 3rd, 7th, 6th, 2nd, 40th. Had a rough race there in 2014. He won in 2013, and then his 7th, 3rd, 8th, 4th. So he's always up there, and the practice speeds that he showed just confirmed everything for me. He was 2nd in first practice, 5th in second practice, but he was the fastest car on the track in terms of 5-lap averages on those. So it looks like he's got a good long-run car. He's been good on the road courses. Just sliding over on the cheat sheet here, looking at road course history. Hasn't got a win in the last 6 races on a road course. Like I said, his last win was at 2013 Watkins Glen, but he's got 4 top 5s, 5 top 10s in those 6 races, and a 9.0 average finish. And then looking at just road courses, going last year, I've added that to the members only sheet as well. He's got a 10.5 average finish going back to the start of last year. So he hasn't been as good. Martin Truex Jr. is kind of taking that over. He's won 3 of the last 4 and 3 of the last 6 road course races. He's owned 2 other drivers. Him and Boyer, other than Busch, have 4 top 5s in those last 6 races. He has led 179 laps, more than, I think, second place here is Elliott at 64 laps led. Keselowski at 66, Elliott at 64. That's in the last 6 races. So he's tripled the field in terms of laps led. Looking at just the last 2 years' road courses, he's gone 1st, 14th, 2nd, and 1st. Average finish of 4.5. Average DraftKings points of 60.4 and FanDuel 52.6, which is way above anyone else. So those 2 are definitely going to be my core. I like looking at the JGR cars this week. Actually, all 4 of them are in my core. Denny Hamlin at 9,400. I like it because you've got the 2 expensive guys at the top, and then you've got Hamlin and Jones, who are a little bit cheaper, give you in that high 8, low 9K range on DraftKings, give you a little bit of salary relief there, depending on which way you want to build. I don't think you necessarily need to stack teammates. I don't see them helping each other. There's no draft in here, nothing like that. It's just that all their cars are strong. They were all top 10 in practice, so definitely looking at them to be a very strong team here today. So I'm going to go through. I've just kind of been over. I don't have 2 screens set up, so I've just been going over the cheat sheet. So I'm just back to the chat screen here. I'm just going to go over and answer some questions. Who else to the rear? I'm not confirmed on that yet. I'm just waiting on some upgrades. I had some trouble setting up the show, so I'm about 20, 25 minutes behind on checking on the inspection. I know for sure the first 9 rows, the top 18 in the starting order, had passed inspection. And then, of course, Blaney was 19th, and that's right when I lost my connection with my updates at the moment. So I will check that out here shortly. I'm just trying to find a feed or who's covering it on Twitter now. Because I know Bob Pockers is away. I think they do their tweet up right now, something like that. So, yeah, I'm not finding it at the moment. So I'm just going to keep answering some questions, and as I find that information, I will give that to you. Oh, it was after tech. Okay. Thanks, Louis. Thanks for helping me out here with these updates. Kind of had my own issues, like I said, here this morning. So if he failed after tech, if he passed tech, keeps his 19th starting spot, then goes to there, yeah, I'm definitely going to be a lot lower on him. He's going to be super low on if that's the case. I'll still have, 5%, a little bit, just because he's got a fast car, and it is possible to come through the field when you have a very fast car. It may take till stage 3 until he gets up inside that top 20. I think he could probably do it by near the end of stage 2, depending on the strategies and how cautions play out and stuff like that. But definitely lowers his ownership this week, ups the ownership of Eric Jones. That mid-range this week is not great. So Ryan Blaney, a good play. Yeah, so I just kind of discussed that. Definitely going to be GPP only, keeping his 19th starting spot, but going to the rear. Play Elliott and Bush, the same lineup. Yeah, I've made some stacks definitely with Elliott and Bush in my lineups. Thoughts on Byron on DK? I'm just going to flip over and have a look at him. He's 6th in my model right now. I like that he's starting out front, like I explained in the Roto Pros video earlier, the preview video, and in the DFSR preview, that the correlation between not only starting position and finishing position is very high this week, but the correlation between practice speeds. Drivers that are fast in both practices are very fast in one, maybe average in the other. So when it comes to Byron, he was 13th in the first practice, 8th in the second practice, 9th in both 5-lap averages ranks. So I don't think he's necessarily a top 5 car, but I definitely think he is a top 10 car. Definitely like him a little bit more on FanDuel because of that. I just don't see him being, if you think that he stays top 5, definitely think he's a good play on DraftKings at only 7,200. It makes a lot of sense. Just the speed that he showed, I'm kind of looking at like a 5th to 10th place finish, and I don't know if that's enough for me, especially if I'm going to be loading up like with Elliott, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr. Like I think Elliott can get out front and lead some laps. I think Busch and Truex can lead some laps. I think those are the drivers that you're maybe looking at to lead 15 to 25 laps. Maybe all 3 of them get there. And to do that, to pair 2 of those top guys on DraftKings, we're going to have to play stars and scrubs and kind of fade that middle zone. So if you're going Busch Truex or Busch Elliott, or even I'm going to be mixing Bowyer and Hamlin in there in the 9K plus range on DraftKings. So those 5 drivers, I'm going to be mixing in at least 2 of them together, and I would say almost all my lineups, I'm going to have 2 of them. So that takes me down into the 7,500 and lower range, which does have Byron, but that's a little bit risky. I think he maybe helps the ownership side of things, but I'm going to be looking at more the Priestes and Kligermans and Dillon and Ragan and Sorensen are my favorite ones right now. Priest doesn't have any Cup car experience here, but what he does have, go back and look at his Xfinity series and how he did. His last 2 races at Watkins Glen, he was 10th this year. I believe, that was yesterday. And then he was 4th last year at Watkins Glen, and in between there at the Roval, he was 4th, and then he was 11th at Elkhart Lake. Going back to 2016, so I'm not really looking back that far. So 10th, 4th, and 4th in his last 3 road races in the Xfinity series. So I'll definitely be looking at him for a value here this week. Okay, going down a little bit more. This is for Luke, cash game lock stud. Depends what site you're looking at. On FanDuel, I would probably go, actually even both sites, just with the discount that you're getting. He's starting on the pole. I'm going to go with Chase Elliott if you're building cash games. He's $1,300 cheaper than Kyle Busch, $1,000 cheaper than Truex on DraftKings. Then you look at FanDuel. Truex is $14,500, Busch is $15,000. You get a huge discount going down to Elliott, $11,500. He starts on the pole. I think he can get out front, lead points there, but I think he's a top 5 car at the end of the day with winning upside, probably even a top 3 car if nothing goes wrong here. And at that big discount, if you're starting cash games, you can build a really balanced lineup with Elliott. And then going even further, especially on FanDuel, Clint Bowyer at only $9,000 really just pops off the page. 14th and 6th in practices, starting 13th. He's been excellent on the road courses, #1 road course average finish over the last 3 years, going back to the start of 2017. He doesn't have a win, but he's got just give me 2 seconds here. We'll find that 5.8 average finish since the start of 2017 over the last 6 road course races, 4 top 5s in those 6 races. 2, he had trouble, finished outside the top 10, but he finished top 20. Starting 13th at that price, I think a combination of Elliott and Bowyer on FanDuel is most definitely the way to go if you're playing cash games. Next questions, thoughts on Byron, talked about that. I think like I said with Byron, I think it's a deeper GPP play. He is cheap enough where I think a top 10 finish, an 8th to 10th, 7th to 10th finish will definitely get you there. But I like going cheaper on DraftKings because I'm going to be going with 2 or 3 of the, top high mid-tier to top-tier guys. Ward, yeah, there's inspection this morning. So NASCAR has shortened the race weekends this year. So both practices were Saturday, followed by qualifying. The cars are impounded after that. They're not allowed to work on them, is what that means, until Sunday morning. Sunday morning they do. It started at, I believe, 9 a.m. Eastern today. They did tech. What that means is just inspection. So they inspect the cars pre-race. If anyone fails that inspection on the first time through, they lose their qualifying time and start from the rear on the pace laps when the race starts. For fantasy, what that means is they will get a new starting position. So, for instance, if Elliott on the pole failed tech the first round, let's say, he would go to the rear, but he wouldn't, for fantasy, he wouldn't start from first anymore. He would actually go back to 37th. So he'd be picking up those place differential points from the 37th spot. He didn't fail, but if someone did fail, that's how that works. Now, with the Blaney thing, he failed after inspection. He passed inspection. He had to make a change after inspection. And anytime you make a change to the car, changing engines, going to a backup car, that sort of thing, then you automatically go to the rear. And it's called different. It sounds the same. I know it can be confusing, but you go to the rear, but you keep your starting spot. So he's going to keep his 19th starting spot in terms of fantasy, but he will start from the rear. So he's going to start with negative place differential right off the bat. That's why he is a, GPP play only this week. There's a lot of risk, especially on one of the hardest tracks for coming through the field, passing cars. So track position's huge. So the fact that he's starting from the rear, but starting with a negative almost 20 place differential, like probably 17 or 18, negative 17 or 18. But like I said, I think that gives him some lower ownership. And in, if you're making 20 lineups, I'd probably put him in one or two. It really helps differentiate yourself because it's going to be lower owned. A lot of people are just going to fade him now, knowing that he's going to be starting with negative points. So I hope that explained the inspection process. It didn't used to be like this. I used to have this video out on Saturday. We already knew where everyone was starting, what everything was going on, but they shortened the weekends. We used to have practice on Friday, followed by qualifying, and then 2 more practices on Saturday. And that inspection would come, obviously, Friday. We'd know everything that was going on. But unfortunately, we got to do it this way. It's helped me create this live show. It's gone over very well. Thank you all for the support. I don't know if I said that enough. You guys have been awesome coming in here, just filling the chat room with questions and trying to keep up. I usually share my screen, like I said, but for anyone that's just kind of jumping in here, I had tons of technical issues this morning, so you just get my pretty face for the whole time we're on the show, but I am here answering questions, so let's get at it. McDowell at 11th, Benedetto at 20th. Okay, so I'm just going to bring up both of their, just kind of see how they're doing on the sheet. Change screens here. So Benedetto is cheap enough at 6,500 where I'm not too concerned by his he's starting 20th, so I definitely like that. He showed 15th and 3rd, so he's showing somewhere in that top 10 to 15 speed, so definitely on him at 6,500. He's got that place differential. I don't think he's going to pick up a ton of spots. I don't think he's going to get his career high, but he was good at, I believe it was Sonoma earlier in the year. His finishes, he hasn't been great here at Watkins Glen, 33rd, 28th, 34th, and 26th. So a little bit of concern there, but he's been racing a lot better lately. This was before, these finishes before were also, we have to keep in mind, before they had the technical alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing and those 4 cars. So they're kind of running, they're sharing information, running some very similar equipment there. It cost JTG Doherty a lot of money, but it has, they've been showing the results lately. So definitely on to Benedetto. Looking at McDowell, starting 11th, I'm not really liking. He showed great speed in practice 2. He was 4th overall in 1-lap speeds. He didn't get any 5 laps runs in there, so I'm a lot lower on McDowell. He is good on the road courses. I do expect to run well here. He's got top 20s in his last 4 trips to Watkins Glen. 12th is his high there, 18th, 12th, 17th, and 20th. He's more of a, I would say, if you're going with the stars and scrubs and using 2 or 3 of the top guys, then you're going down and using 2 or 3 of these value guys, going like a 3 and 3 combo. McDowell, to me, makes a pivot option. If you get stuck in a loop, and I talked about this in chat this morning, you start making, 10, 15, 20 lineups, you get stuck in a loop, and you keep coming back to the same the same guys over and over again, the same 3-4 guys, and you keep selecting the same guy, and before you know it, you've got 50% of De Benedetto, or you've got 45% of Priest. And well, there's a lot of variance with these guys. They're obviously not in the same equipment as the top guys. We don't want to be overexposed to these lower end guys. So what I've been trying to do more and more each and every week to get out of this loop is build my cores like I talk about, a 2 or 3 driver core, and then build 10 lineups around the 2 or 3 driver core. But then just keep switching in and out, in and out, in and out with all the 5 or 6 guys that I like at the bottom, not trying to have the equal amount of each of them just to kind of spread out that, because I mean, variance in NASCAR is high enough. So we want to spread it out. We don't want to be tied to 50%, even 40% of some of these cheaper drivers, when, especially on weeks like this, when there is some options. We've got 5 or 6 of these lower end options. We can definitely spread it out. So that's just kind of the way I'm looking at it. So McDowell, if you're making 20, and you want to, you go through your 20 and you see that you're overexposed to some of these guys. He's a guy that I will try and go and plug in 1 or 2 spots, just to try and differentiate and get some low ownership with your combinations of your lineups. Thank you, Andre. Just seeing that. Thanks for everything, Chris. Appreciate it. Thoughts on Logano, Larson, and Suarez. So I'm going to kind of cover all those: Logano, Larson, and Suarez. So looking at Logano, I'm very high on Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Chase Elliott, Clint Boyer, and Denny Hamlin. Those are all guys 94 and up, 9K and up. So that makes me automatically a little bit lower in Logano. He's number 21 in my model. He is starting 21st. Showed top 10 speed in opening practice, 19th in second practice. It's championship, defending champion, so championship driver. He's on a top team. I think he can get there. I think he's going to be low owned. My exposure is a little bit low. He hasn't been good, when it comes to road courses and Watkins Glen in general. He hasn't been, I guess, the best out there. He's struggled quite a bit. I'm just going to pull up some of his information here. As you can see on the model, I mean, if you're looking at the sheet, he's ranked almost, it was like 28th or something like that, in terms of his average finishes here at Watkins Glen lately. So not too high, but again, I think just with the popularity of the other guys that I've already mentioned, that he's going to be lower owned. So he's 24th and 37th his last 2 finishes. But before that, he was very good. Second in 2016, 2015 he won this race. 6th and 7th in 2014 and 2013. So you might get, because you're looking at the ranks on the sheet, those ranks are the last 2 years, so that kind of covers that. When it looks at career track history here in terms of average finish, he's 13th. But just road courses in general, looking at the cheat sheet, he's only averaging 9.8 DK, 19.9 FanDuel points per race over the last 4 road course races. He's way down the list. 23rd, 10th, 37th, and 19th are his finishes in those 4 races. The 10th was at the Roval, so that one was the first race there. So not high in Logano whatsoever. Again, if you find yourself in a loop where you've got a bunch of exposure to these top guys and you want to make a couple contrarian GPPs, Joey Logano is a driver that I'm going to be plugging in there. Same with Brad Keselowski, Kurt Busch, and Kevin Harvick. Those are the 4 drivers that I don't have highlighted as core, highlighted in green in the 9K plus range. So those are the 4 drivers. Obviously, usually the drivers I have in my core are going to be like the popular drivers. I mean, they're fast. They got good track history. They got good track type history. They're coming in with form. They're going to be popular. They're going to be high owned. So the drivers that I don't highlight doesn't mean don't use them. It just means those are possibly going to be projected lower owned guys and nice plugs, GPP pivots to get your ownership a little bit lower, especially looking at the success they've had here, going back 3, 4, 5 years ago. Like I said, Logano struggled here in his last 2 trips. So Bubba Wallace, they changed the gear in opening practice, so that's why he was dead last in practice. If you're looking at the cheat sheet, 30th when they came back out in second practice, and that's right where he qualified. In terms of how he has done here at Watkins Glen, he's not someone I'm looking to as a road course guy. Finished 25th here last year. I mean, that was an excellent finish for him. If we go look at how he did in terms of Xfinity Series. When he was in the Xfinity Series, yeah, he has no races over the last few years there. Again, that would be, I don't have him highlighted. I don't see much better than, he didn't show that in practice. He hasn't really shown that lately. 22.2 average finish over the last 6 races. Again, that's not really road courses. Let's go look at his road course here. Road course finishes last 4, going back to the start of last year. 26th at Sonoma this year, 36th at the Roval, 25th at Watkins Glen last year, and then 29th at Sonoma last year as well. For his price, I think he gets there on FanDuel quite easily, 4,500. You know, he doesn't really need that place differential. On DraftKings, you're kind of looking for a 25th place finish from him. I'd rather, you know, go down into the range. He showed a little bit better speed. Same with Ty Dillon. He showed better speed, although he started 3 spots ahead. But he was 20th in second practice, 27th in first practice. So I will have a little bit of Bubba Wallace, but not as much as these other guys. Okay. Eric Jones, yeah, he actually got lucky if you were watching qualifying. He blew a tire in his first lap. They allowed him to change that tire and get back out there. I thought he was just going to go automatically to the rear. He got back out there after strong top 10 in both open practices, ended up qualifying 14th. Definitely like him because I know that JGR cars, they all got top 10 speed this week. So definitely be on him at a sub 9K price tag on DraftKings and only 10,000 on FanDuel. I think, again, you could build a really strong, balanced lineup going with like Chase Elliott, Clint Boyer, and Eric Jones on FanDuel. The most expensive driver that I just mentioned there was Elliott 11.5, Jones 10,000, Clint Boyer 9,000. So it gives you a driver in each of the 11, 10, and 9K range with a lot to spare going over. You can go so many different ways with that 3-driver core. So if in terms of building cores, you put that 3 core together, build 10 lineups with those 3 drivers together. And make sure you get a lot of exposure with the other 3 drivers, 2 drivers in your lineup, depending DK or FanDuel. Get a bunch of exposure. That's how I build my cores. So that when those 3 drivers go off, and I mention this every single week, I just keep pounding it into your guys' heads. When those 3 drivers goes off, give yourself the best chance you can at winning a GPP with your other 3 drivers. If you've only got that 3-driver core once and they finish 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 in DraftKings or FanDuel points as well, but you've only ran that core once, it really depends on those other 3 drivers. And the problem with relying on those other 3 drivers is they're on lesser teams, and there's a heck of a lot more variance when it comes to their finishes week in and week out. So you want to get as much exposure as you can to the 3 drivers that you're very confident in, Elliott, Boyer, Jones, for instance, if that's your one core. Get as much exposure to the other drivers in that lineup as possible so that you have a lot of combinations, a lot of chances to win a GPP. It's definitely how I go about looking at building lineups, is build your cores first. So there's one. Go and build 2 or 3 cores, and then select all the value guys that you have at the bottom, and then just mix and match. Don't just build one lineup with this core, one lineup with this core, one lineup with this core, and one with this core. You've got 4 completely different lineups if you're only running 4 lineups. If you're doing like 3 maxes, 5 maxes, stuff like that, if I'm doing a 3 max entry on DK, I will literally build almost the identical lineup in 2 of them, swapping in maybe 2 drivers. And then the third one will be very similar. I'll probably keep 2 of that original core in those first 2 lineups, and then build in some other guys to kind of build a third contrarian lineup while keeping a little bit of my core. So that's kind of how I go about lineup construction in those ones. But if you're going in the 20 maxes, 150 maxes, and you're building that many lineups, build a core. If you're doing the 150 max, let's just discuss that for a second. Take your 3 drivers, build a core, and if you're doing 150 max, do 25 lineups with those 3 drivers, and just boom, 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 swap in all the other drivers, as many combinations as you can possibly do with the rest of your value guys, and even some guys that you maybe don't feel comfortable about, guys that are not showing up in this. There's only 37 drivers in NASCAR this week. 40 is the max. That's a very small player pool to begin with, and we're trying to narrow that down even more. And when we do that, we tend to forget about a few guys here and there that don't make our original player pool. If you're doing that many lineups and you're building 25 lineups with your 1 3-player core, mix in those guys. Definitely go ahead and mix in those other guys to give yourself a chance, as many chances as possible. Denny's going to win. Definitely like Denny. He's on a roll. He's having one of the best seasons in a while. He's still the big thing for him now is going for the championship. He's missed it twice now, missed that championship, once by like, I think it was a point that year. So he's definitely got the championship on his mind, and one way for him to increase his chances of championships is to get more wins, more stage wins, and rack up those playoff points like Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, like they have. They get in a wreck, first race of the playoffs, they've got those bonus points to give them a little bit of a cushion over other drivers to help them get into the next round despite a wreck, whereas the old format, still in the playoffs here, still in the state, but without the stage racing and those playoff points that they have now. It was you get in a wreck in the first round of the playoffs, you're pretty much out, you're done. So those playoff points are huge, and you're going to see those guys with wins really push and try and get as many more as possible, like I talked about for strategy, versus guys like Jimmy Johnson, Eric Jones, Daniel Suarez, Ryan Newman. They're going to be racing for points, and this is going to be crucial. Like at, say, the end of stage 2, you're going to see those guys, if they're near sniffing the top 10, in the top 10, or even outside, out to the 15th place position, they're going to stay out on the track and try and get inside that top 10, knowing a lot of the guys that have wins already are going to go pit and try and set themselves up to win the race versus try and get those stage points. So those guys that are staying out there to get stage points are maybe hurting their upside at the end of the race for a win. So keep that in mind. If you're picking a winner, make sure it's probably going to be a guy that's already got a win, to be honest, unless you see guys that are maybe a little bit faster who don't have wins. A crazy strategy might end up winning this. And I talked about guys like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. They're a team that's probably going to go ahead and do some crazy strategies this week to try and get a win. Chris Buescher, Austin Dillon, Ty Dillon, those guys that are kind of outside the points. But like I said, your Suarez's, Johnson, Boyer, Newman, Larson, Jones, Byron, those guys are going for points. And it's going to be huge this week. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. So keep that in mind when you're making your lineups, that their upside may be a little bit capped due to strategy, just looking for those stage points to try and get in the playoffs. I mean, we've got Byron starting second. So if they get through all of stage 1 and they hang in the top 5 and they're just looking like they have a car that can hang in the top 5 all day and maybe have a shot to win, I expect that team to push and try and get that win, because a win is obviously going to lock you into the playoffs. But if they look like they're not going to have a strong car, they're kind of falling back into the 6th to 10th place, they're probably going to fight for points all day long and not make that strategy and try and, a strategy to those teams to try and win, to go off on a crazy strategy, maybe where they get caught in a caution and they have to start from the rear. That kills their chances at a playoffs when you're talking guys that are separated by 5 to 10 points right on that cut line. So I don't see them taking huge risks to try and get a win. They're just going to kind of play it out. Versus guys like Ryan Newman, he started 25th. I don't expect I don't expect a top 10 from them. I expect them in the first couple of stages to try and get up front and get some points. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Enough rambling about the points and stuff. I just really wanted to discuss strategy a lot this week. It was definitely on my list of things to discuss more than just drivers. Was strategy, lineup building, that sort of thing. I had a lot of people ask, how do you go about building your cores? How do you differentiate your cores? I've had questions. I'm getting stuck in a loop of every single lineup I've made over the last 20. I keep coming back to this 3 or 4 drivers in this range, and I keep picking this one over and over and over and over again. So I wanted to discuss that. So I'm going to just scroll back through here, find some more guys that I'm looking at, some questions. I got Ellis here, Preece or Ty Dillon on DK value. Like I talked about, I like Preece starting 29th. Who else did you say? Ty Dillon. So he's get 2 better place differential points. Ty Dillon showed more speed. Like I said, he was 20th and 27th in practice. Preece was 27th and 29th. I think Ty Dillon's upside is kind of in that 20 to 25th place range. I think Preece's is more in the 25th to 30th place range. Preece is more expensive, didn't show the same speeds. I'm a little bit more on Ty Dillon at $400 cheaper on DraftKings for you. There is the way I'm going to be looking at that. I will have exposure to both, but I definitely lean Ty Dillon a little bit more. Looking at myself in this video, I see that I'm looking down, not trying to do that, just the way the camera set up. Like I said, my old setup, this was all perfect, and I would have been probably done this video by now making lineups. So I'm probably going to be reduced to 5 to 10 lineups on each site today. I probably missed out on all the good contests. I did get in the ones I wanted early, but definitely I'm not going to get as many as I wanted. So I'm going to go back to the questions here real quick in terms of the issues, crash, showing good speed, top speed in practice, getting hurt late in the race, in stage 3 and stuff like that. So I definitely agree it's time to change. He's actually got the 11th best road course average finish over the last 2 years, going back to the start of last year, 10th, 25th, 6th, and 14th. That 25th was also at the Roval. I don't know if you remember, definitely go to YouTube and search Larson Roval finish. It is freaking hilarious. He made it into the next round. That Roval was the elimination race. Jimmy Johnson took out Martin Truex Jr. Ryan Blaney crossed the finish line as the winner, and Larson literally needed 1 point to get into the next round. Jimmy Johnson just needed to get across the finish line, which he wasn't going to do because him and Truex crashed. Larson came around. He only had 3 tires. He came around that final, I think they call it like the chicane or whatever, kind of where it loops out, crashed against the wall and just like limped over the finish line to win. It was absolutely crazy race. But that was his 25th place finish. He was 10th, 6th, and 14th in the other road courses. So yeah, I definitely like Larson for GPP this week. There's not a lot of mid-range that I like with the downgrade of Blaney there as well. So that just bumps up Larson for me. Denny, so that's Gary. Thanks for the comments here, Gary. Jerry Frost says Denny plus Sorensen plus Hemrick. I think this is how I'll be starting a few lines. I like Denny to win, so I'm definitely liking that. I'm not sure if you're talking DK or FanDuel, but I love Sorensen. Only 5,300 on DK, 2,500. He's pretty much free on FanDuel. Starting dead last. Well, his starting position is dead last. Blaney will start behind him, so he picks up that 1 point there, which is nice to see that he's gonna pick up that 1 place differential point right away. I'm not expecting absolutely anything. Okay, so here's the update. No one failed tech, but Blaney to the rear. So that's the update on that there. No cheat sheet for members. JP, the members only cheat sheet is in the RotoPros chat as well as the DFSR chat room. The DFSR chat room, there's the main members chat room. You're probably not going to find it. There's a lot of baseball talk going on right now. What you're going to want to do, and for anyone watching DFSR, remember, if you're looking for that other chat room, and I only use it to post cheat sheets for you to easily find them if I'm not happen to be in the chat. So on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you're going to see a menu, and it's going to be in gray. If you click on that, there's like 3 little lines. Click on that, click chat, and then go up to NHL/PGA/NASCAR chat, and the chat room where I share all those extra sheets. So definitely check that out, or on just in the main members chat for RotoPros, or in the hashtag daily content channel. Not expecting a whole lot from him. 35th place finish, I'd probably take it on FanDuel at 2,500. He's going to help you get all of the top drivers in. On DraftKings, pairing him with Hemrick, I didn't mention Hemrick. I definitely starting 2030 showed around that speed. I think he's like a 20th to 23rd place car. I don't think he's going to get inside the top 20 unless there's some guys that crash and he gets out there. He's got no experience in a Cup car in terms of road courses, but going back and looking at his Xfinities, like his last, what do I got here? His last 7 Xfinity races on road courses, he was 10th at the Roval, 3rd at Elkhart Lake, 3rd at Mid-Ohio, 16th at Watkins Glen, 15th at Elkhart Lake, 2nd at Mid-Ohio, and 11th at Watkins Glen. So he hasn't finished worse than 16th at a road course, and he's also got 3 top 5s and 4 top 10s in those 7 races as well. So he's been very good on the road courses. So definitely looking at him as a value play. I haven't added him here yet, but I also think, like DeBenedetto, he's going to be lower owned because they're in the mid 6K range on DraftKings, while I do like a bunch of guys in this 6,100 and below down into the 5K range this week. So I think sorry, that's Austin Dillon. Looking totally at the wrong driver here. Sorry for anyone following along. I just highlighted the wrong guy. Daniel Hemrick's at 7,000. So definitely think he's going to be lower owned because of that, because you can get cheaper guys with similar upside, similar points upside. So I think I do like going that way. I'm not normally on Hemrick because they've been qualifying well, but this week I'm definitely going to be on board. Stenhouse or Menard on DK. I'm Menard started in 22nd, didn't show much better speed. Stenhouse did show some top 10 speed, so I'm liking that. He's also starting a little bit more, so Stenhouse would be more GPP if you're looking like something a little bit safer. Menard is definitely a little bit safer, 10 starting spots back. So safety, Menard, Contrarian, Stenhouse. Well, the thing with Blaney, I'm just give me 2 seconds here. Yeah, I can't find it. You have to give me a second here. I do play fantasy football. If I'm just looking for confirmation on this Blaney thing, I'm just not finding it here yet. Oh, yeah, there we go. So what the problem was, I'm just trying to see, just looking at Dustin Long here on Twitter, unapproved adjustments, past inspection, found an issue in the rear suspension area. Okay, there we go. And made a change to be on the safe side. So they made an adjustment to the suspension, which automatically sends them to the rear. His starting position, though, stays at 19th for fantasy. Keep that in mind. So I don't think it's not a slam dunk play with Blaney anymore, because he's starting with a negative almost 20, like I said, 17 or 18 place differential. So I don't, definitely not a slam dunk. He's more of a GPP play. Before, I really liked it starting 19th because he showed a ton of speed. I do think he can get back inside the top 20 and start picking up that positive place differential, probably upside of top 10. It's going to be very hard. This is one of the toughest tracks, like I said. Track position's huge, very tough to pass. It's going to take a lot of strategy for them if they want to have a chance at getting inside the top 10, even to try and win the race, which I think that's out of their minds now. I think that would be out of their minds, especially considering where they sit in the points. When you look at where they are in the points, like I said, they got 599 points. I'm just going to bring that up here one more time. Before, I had them in group, I believe that was group 2, the guys without wins, and there's only 2 of them, him and Almirola without wins, but are more than 60 points to the good in terms of, because Clint Boyer, Ryan Newman, 532 points on the cut line. You've got Ryan Blaney at 599, so he's just over 60, 67 points to the good. I think a good day for them now that they're going to the rear after they made these adjustments is if he can get back inside the top 20 and finish like 15th. I think they're going to call that a win today because he's going to get, he's going to be right around those guys that need points as well. But he just needs to salvage his day and get some points and not lose a bunch of points to those guys, or else he's going to be in the conversation of the bubble next week, which they really don't want. So if he can stay somehow 50, 60 points ahead of the cut line after this race going to the rear, I think that's good. So that kind of takes his downside down a little bit for me here this week. My exposure to Blaney is definitely going to be down more. I've actually just changed him on the sheet now that we've got full confirmation on this as a GPP play. He was green before, so if you are looking at the member sheet, I just updated that. Thanks, Alice. Much appreciated. Love your new track. I just want to give you a shout out as well. Check Alice out on Twitter. Loved his new track this week. Next up with questions, I'm going to scroll back a bit too. I know I missed some just because I can't see both screens at once. Oh yeah, fantasy football, definitely. I've got my cheat sheet prepping already for week 1. I don't play preseason. I more or less watch preseason just to try and take some notes. I don't really involve myself in that variance at all. I already involved myself with this variance, so that's enough for me. And then PGA as well. Plus I cover MLB. And then again, NFL, NHL coming up as well. So I'm prepping for that. I'm the main NHL guy for both sites as well. So I got a lot going on my plate. So that's kind of why I don't do preseason NFL, but definitely prepping. I've already done some season-long drafts in terms of Dynasty. I've already done some best balls. So going to have some information coming out on all that later. So back to NASCAR. You think about all the Toyotas. Yeah, I've seen that. So one thing, Gary, they were talking about with the Toyota smoking when they were coming off of, I think that was for qualifying yesterday, or maybe one of the practices. Coming off pit road, you could see a lot of smoke coming off all of those cars. So what they were talking about was turning right and left at these road courses. The oil in the engine sloshes from side to side a lot more than just going round and round, where the oil just kind of sticks to one part of the engine just with just the way it shifts with the car going left. So some of the teams they were talking about just with getting that engine ready, whether it be adding oil or I forget exactly what they said on the broadcast there, but that was what that was from. Definitely not concerned with it at all. I don't think, it's not, they didn't mention it as any kind of engine issue. That's what they really talked about was just the road courses and how the oil sloshes in the engine. And maybe they didn't get into what they did. And I'm sure there's a quote out there somewhere from a Toyota rep or someone on one of those 4 or 5 teams as to what exactly they did. I'm not exactly sure at this moment, but I'm not concerned with it. Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate you tuning in here. Appreciate everyone that has said anything in here today. I appreciate you guys. I couldn't do the show. I wouldn't be doing the show if no one was in here asking questions and stuff. There wouldn't be any value to the show whatsoever. So it's really you guys coming in here and showing me, I have 50, 60 people watching this live and getting, 200, 300, 400 views on this. So I will definitely keep doing it and providing the information because this is what I do. Fantasy sports. I do it pretty much 12 to 16 hours a day, 365 days a year, working on these cheat sheets and information and taking notes and prepping and research. It's my full-time job. So I just want to help as many people as possible. I'm going to do some scrolling up, some drivers below 6,200 on DK. So Andrew L., this is for you. 6,200 or cheaper on DK. On my members only cheat sheet, I've got 5 drivers highlighted. So really like stars and scrubs this week, as you can tell. Ryan Preece, I mentioned, he was top 10 in his last 3 Xfinity road course races, although this is his first Cup experience here at Watkins Glen. Parker Kligerman as well. 5,900. Ty Dillon's probably my favorite, starting 27th. I think he's like a 20th to 25th place car. David Reagan, we didn't talk much about him, 5,600, starting 31st. I think he's like a 25th to 30th place car there as well, very cheap, mid 5K range. And I'm all about fitting 2 of these guys in my lineup to get Busch Truex or, 2 or 3 of these 9K plus guys on DraftKings, which normally is very tough. I'll even go down and punt with Reed Sorensen in some lineups. Mostly Sorensen for me is going to be on FanDuel 2,500 because he's pretty much a free space. And Reagan and Ty Dillon, who I like a lot more than Sorensen, who I think have 25th to 30th place upside, are only $300 and $400 more. So on DK, I'm probably not going to have any Sorensen now that I think about it, just because of that price jump is not very much up to Dillon or Reagan, who have more upside. But on FanDuel 2,500, that is a free space for Sorensen. I'll definitely go with that. I was even considering Landon Castle as well. If you find yourself doing a lot of punting with Sorensen, you don't want 20, 25% of them, definitely throw some Castle in there as well. Yeah, I that's kind of one thing I noticed with NASCAR is there's not a whole lot of content. There's a lot of very good content out there. Stevie TPFL, I got to meet him in Daytona 500 last year. I followed his stuff for years. He was kind of one of the ones that inspired me to do more NASCAR stuff and get into the NASCAR because he's very knowledgeable as well. Over on Roto Grinders, I don't normally go out and pump up other sites, but I got no problem with it. He's excellent. He provides top-notch stuff. He goes to a ton of races. That's kind of where I see myself in the future, is actually doing these shows right from the track, going to 5, 10 races in a season. I went to 2 last year. It was an awesome experience. NASCAR puts on a heck of a show. If you've never seen a race live, it'll really change the whole way you look at NASCAR in general. And I've spent the Daytona 500 as well as the Phoenix race in November in the garage area. So I got to spend all that time there. I got to talk to some drivers. I got to meet them, got to interview them at Daytona 500. I got to do all that stuff and get really close to the sport. And to tell you the truth, I bet you when I got married, we went to a race in Vegas. My dad took me to my very first race. I didn't watch NASCAR before that, not even once. It was kind of on the back burner to hockey as a Canadian for sure. Baseball, football. I went to that race, and I have been a super fan ever since I heard the first car start its engine. So my favorite driver, obviously, Kyle Busch. He crashed in that race, actually went up in flames. Still absolutely loved the show. It was absolutely amazing. So that's where my passion for NASCAR comes from. So just going to see if I missed any questions. If you asked a question earlier in the show, definitely fire it in here again. I am scrolling through just to see if I missed anything. drivers I didn't talk about, yeah, hit the like button. Thanks, Earl. Those really help, with getting seen on YouTube and stuff like that. It's pretty much the currency here for this YouTube show is likes and shares and subscribes and all that kind of stuff. And especially this chat, that's number one for me. So Stenhouse or Menard, I talked about that. I'm leaning Menard low safety, Stenhouse GPP, Denny and Chase and Jones, or Denny, Chase, and Blaney. Definitely Denny, Chase, and Jones. This is for Dave Goodrick. Asked this a little bit back in chat. And that's just with Blaney being super. I think his ownership's going to be down, but like I said, the risk has gone up because he keeps his 19th starting position, but starts from the rear. He's a driver that he'll be looking for points more than a win this week, starting from the rear at a very tough track to pass. So, I'm looking for them to salvage this day and get like a 10th to 15th place finish and pick up as many points as possible. So definitely not way down on Blaney, but a lot more down than I was earlier. He was a core play for me before this news. So Denny, Chase, Jones there for me. Busch looks like the win if it stays green. Yeah, his long run car. He's definitely got the best car. Opening practice, Alex Bowman passed him in one lap just because they were running a qualifying run. So this is one reason, if you're not watching practice and you're just looking at the sheet and you're just looking at practice ranks, I've started doing some notes for members only as well. I try and watch as much practice as possible. I don't have PVR yet, but I do have a system now where I can pause it and watch it later because things like that. So Kyle Busch was the fastest car in opening practice the whole time. 5 laps, 10 lap averages, 1 lap averages. He looked at the best car. Bowman passed him late, but what Bowman did was they ran, because of the 2 practices coming before qualifying now in these impound races, what happens is drivers late in these practices will go and tape up the front and they'll go make some mock qualifying runs to get ready for qualifying. So they kind of know their setup and how it's going to run for qualifying. That's what Bowman did, and that's why he got a faster lap and jumped to the top of the board. Without watching practice and seeing that and hearing Dale Jr. talk about that, because they actually went and they looked at the front of the car, just seen that they taped it in. He said, yeah, they're definitely running a mock qualifying run. Without that information, you'd think, okay, well, Bowman's definitely got the fastest car on the track. Well, not the case, because a lot of those drivers out there late in these practices will go run a mock qualifying run, which is a faster run. What they'll do on these mock qualifying runs is they'll tape up the front, which if they did this in the race, obviously the car would overheat. In a mock qualifying run, where you only need to make 1 or 2, any qualifying run doesn't have to be mock qualifying run where you're only making 1 or 2 hot laps. You can tape up that front and restrict the air a little bit, which gives you a little bit extra speed. So that's where that comes from. So keep that in mind. What about Larson? Talked about Larson. Definitely like him a lot more now. Logano, I'm a little bit down on. But like I said, the guys that are on my sheet that are highlighted as core are normally going to be your high-owned guys as well when projected ownership. If I like them in 37 drivers, like I said, you can probably narrow that down to like 32 drivers every week right off the bat. Then you've got the core drivers, which everyone's kind of going to be on those guys because I'm looking at track history, track type, current form, fantasy scoring, that sort of thing, along with practice information. The guys that I don't have highlighted make great pivots. NASCAR is a high variance sport, so you want to play with that variance. You want to embrace that variance. Where if Kyle Busch, and he will be 60, probably 50 to 60% owned in GPPs, yes, I'm going to have, overexposure. I'm probably going to have 65, 70% on the driver that I, pick out as my top guy, which that would be him. But you can definitely go contrarian. He might get in a crash. He did yesterday here at Watkins Glen. Not in a crash. They broke, I believe it was a front left arm or something. He was out of the race. That all of a sudden, he was like 80% in the Xfinity race just because there wasn't very many Cup drivers and he was easily the best driver out there. But that just opened up, just killed 78% of the lineups in that tournament. All of a sudden, 20% of the field is like, wow, we're cashing easy and we got a chance to win this GPP. So with high variance sports, things can happen. Busch can get in a crash, mechanical issues, penalties, get caught behind. So definitely take some of those GPP pivots in the lineups that you don't have and think about those scenarios. It's kind of like when we talk NFL and we're talking about game flow. This team is probably going to be ahead by 10 to 14 points in the second half. So this running back should get 10 to 15 carries in the second half. I want to roster that running back this week just because of the sheer volume alone. But on the other side, you can back that running back up by going with a wide receiver on the opposing team, because that team's going to be throwing to try and catch up and should have more opportunities there. So it's kind of similar, kind of cross strategy, I guess you could say, in NASCAR, where if, think about if Kyle Busch crashes out, he's going to be 60% owned. Who's going to have the shot to win the race if he's not in the race? Who's the next best car? Then build some cores around those guys. And then maybe the scenario where Truex and Busch are both out, then you start building some balanced lineups, because everyone's going to be going after those two drivers who are probably 1 and 2 in everyone's model. Like I said, going to Chase Elliott, Bowyer, Hamlin, Jones, those drivers in the mid 10K down to high 8K range, start building a three driver core to those fading Kyle Busch and Truex. If something happens to Busch and Truex, you are way ahead of the field. So think about that just when you're constructing your cores, when you're constructing your lineups. Think about all that kind of stuff as well, because it is huge in making your decisions. Yeah, to crank it up on TV, I don't even crank it up anymore. It just doesn't do it for me. Restarts at a track, standing in the stands, standing up, watching them restart. The first 1, 2, even 3 laps when they're all grouped together and you can hear all the cars together is absolutely amazing. And you may not even think it, but the sound at Phoenix, the sound at Vegas, and the sound at Daytona sitting in the stands, all 3 are absolutely different. Daytona, you could standing in the stands, and I was past the start-finish line kind of towards turn 1 for the Cup race for the Daytona 500. When they come around turn 4, you could feel the stand shake at Daytona because they're all going like 195 to 200 miles an hour. They're all coming in a group. Phoenix, they get spread out, so it's a lot of zing, 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 and then the sound never stops. Vegas is kind of a little bit more spread out, but again, faster speeds than at Phoenix. So anyways, back to how many lap leaders in the winning lineup do you think? Well, the thing here is, I mentioned it in the preview video. If we go look at the last 6 races, drivers don't lead 50-plus laps very often. So last year we had 1 driver lead 50-plus laps, and then we had a stretch of 4 straight races where no drivers led 50-plus. Back in 2013, 1 driver led 50-plus. So it's only happened twice in the last 6 races. There's usually 2 drivers that lead 20-plus, sometimes 3. So I'm kind of looking at that again. 2 or 3 drivers to lead between 20 to 30 laps. There's only 90 laps, obviously. I personally think there's probably 2 that lead like 25, another one that leads like 10 to 15. In the winning lineup, I think those drivers are going to separate themselves, but I think those drivers are the same drivers that are going to be near the front. Like my 3 that I try and pick 3 dominators every week who have the best chance at leading laps. Did pretty good with it last week. But this week I'm going with Kyle Busch again, Martin Truex Jr., and Chase Elliott. Elliott, I think, gets out front and leads early. I think he's got a winning car, so I think he can lead laps late as well. He could dominate the laps led. But I think Kyle Busch and Truex definitely are there as well as potential lap leaders. Bristol's on my definitely on my list. That's the one I really wanted to go to first. A little bit more expensive for me traveling east than it is going west. I can actually just drive down to the States. It's only about a 2-3 hour drive for me, and there's some nice cheap airlines. So that's kind of the way I work it. Unfortunately, they don't fly east, so I don't get that savings there. But Bristol's definitely on my list. Next up, I think not going to make it to a race this year, but next year, Phoenix for the final I'm going to be going to, and then I'd really like to try and fit another one in. It's all going to depend, of course, but I'd like to go to California in there as well. Fit in some baseball over there. Okay. Jerry thinks 3, so yeah, I'm kind of there too. Between 15 and 25 laps, I think we see 3 drivers lead that many. Okay, that pretty much... I can't find any more thoughts on Bowyer. Yeah, he's definitely in my core. 9,700, especially on FanDuel, only 9,000. That's like a steal. He should be 50, 60% owned on GPPs. I don't think he will be. I'm going to be overweight on him on FanDuel at only 9,000. I'm going to build some very balanced lineups, like with Elliott, Bowyer, Hamlin, and Jones. 3 of those 4. Not Hamlin, sorry, he's 13,000. Jones, Bowyer, Elliott, definitely in there. So definitely on him. Yeah, no problem. Again, thanks to everyone for tuning in. I'm going to wrap things up, go build some lineups here. I'm going to update. Actually, don't even have to update the cheat sheet because no one failed inspection, so that's great. Going to go build some lineups, get the skeletons in for everyone over there on Roto Pros. That'll be out here in the next 20 to 25 minutes, and we'll go from there. We got lineup lock in about 2 hours 45 minutes from now, 3 p.m. Eastern. Thoughts on McDowell, FanDuel, GPP? Yeah. I talked about him, not as high on him as others, just because he's starting 11th, so he's starting up a little bit. He did show 4th speed, but he did show 22nd speed in opening practice as well. So I think he's kind of sandwiched somewhere in the middle, 15th to 20th place finish. I think upside of 8th to 12th, somewhere in there. So for FanDuel, I'm definitely on board. DraftKings, not as much. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you have any questions after this video, you can leave them in the comment section of this video below. I'll get notifications of that. Hit me up in the DFSR chat. Hit me up in the Roto Pros chat or on Twitter @Jaeger_bombs9. Thanks a lot. Let's go get some green screens. Cheers, everyone.